On Sunday morning, Fran and I joined Mayor Nan Whaley, her husband Sam, Lieutenant Matt Dickey of the Dayton Police Department, to tour the Oregon District where the shooting took place. It's a morning that I will never forget. Crime scene tape, bullet markings, blood, and probably the most poignant thing was a vendor's cart with food still on it, where he had been shot down. 9 people went out on that beautiful Saturday evening, early Sunday morning. 9 people who did not come home. They left their families, they left their friends grieving a loss that is really impossible to comprehend. That night, Sunday night, Fran and I went back to the Oregon District in Dayton to attend a prayer vigil. It was a beautiful, peaceful night, just as it had been the night before. A great Ohio summer night. As Fran and I climbed up to the platform and we looked out, it was amazing the number of people who were there. As far as we could see, there were people, literally, down the street. A testament to the resiliency of Dayton and of the great Miami Valley. Some in the crowd were angry. In fact, I'm sure everybody was angry, because I tell you, Fran and I were angry, and we are angry. And they should be angry. I understand that anger. For it's impossible to make sense out of what is senseless. Some chanted, "Do something." And they were absolutely right. We must do something. And that is exactly what we are going to do. Today I'm announcing the following initiatives, the following actions. Number 1, safety protection orders. We have to empower people to get help for family or loved ones who may be a danger to themselves or a danger to others. People who have mental health challenges, alcohol or drug problems, have violent tendencies, and have access to firearms. Deadly combination. Police and sheriff's deputies also need to be able to activate the criminal justice system when they find an individual in that situation. When they find someone who is in danger, who is a danger to themselves, or who is a danger to others, and has access to a gun. That's why today I'm asking the legislature to pass a law to allow courts to issue safety protection orders. Now I'm going to explain this in detail, because details are important. These orders, which would be granted upon clear and convincing evidence, would allow the removal of firearms from potentially dangerous individuals and get them the mental health treatment that they need, get them whatever help that they need. Individuals could be subject to a safety protection order if they present an imminent risk of injury to themselves. Suicide, for example. Or they present that risk to another person because of mental health issues, because of drug dependency, chronic alcoholism, or other serious conditions. These concerns, of course, must, our Constitution demands it, be balanced against the individual's right to keep and bear arms and their due process rights. My proposal will allow the state of Ohio to file for temporary orders. A hearing under my proposal, this ultimately will be up to the General Assembly. A hearing would, under this proposal, be held within 3 days of the filing or sooner. The individual would have all the traditional due process rights. The temporary order could be granted. A temporary order could be granted if the state shows by probable cause that a person is a danger to themselves or others and has access to firearms. If the temporary order is granted, it would require the person to surrender all firearms to law enforcement. If granted, a hearing would then be held, a second hearing, within 14 days to determine if an extended safety protection order should be granted. In this hearing, all the same traditional due process rights would apply. If the court would then find by clear and convincing evidence that the person is a danger to themselves or to others, the extended order would be issued. Under an extended safety protection order, as we envision it, the court would order a mental health assessment. The individual would be required to undergo any recommended treatment. The individual would be prohibited from purchasing or possessing firearms. And any firearm from the temporary order would continue to be withheld from that individual. In lieu of law enforcement keeping the firearms, an individual could have them sold on their behalf to a federally licensed firearm dealer. Extended orders would last for a period of 6 months and could be extended with another petition and another hearing. An individual could apply to the court any time after 3 months for a return of his firearms, only if the person could prove by clear and convincing evidence that they were no longer a danger to themselves or others. That is during that period of time. Initiative number 2. We must have increased access to the citizens of the state of Ohio, for the citizens of the state of Ohio, to our state psychiatric hospitals. We have a problem in this state. We have a problem with people who are not violent, who have been sent there by a court, who could be sent someplace else. And these individuals are occupying space that we urgently need today. Now, I'm calling on the General Assembly to take action in this area. Inpatient psychiatric care is limited in Ohio, making it difficult for individuals and families to access the level of care when it is needed. Over the past several years, Ohio's state psychiatric hospital capacity has become predominantly used by patients who are court-ordered to the hospital for restoration to competency to stand trial. This week, for example, 79% of the adults in our state psychiatric hospitals are court-ordered there. Many of these patients are nonviolent offenders. Many are misdemeanors. They are there simply in the hospital, pursuant to a court order, to learn how the court process works. It's the only reason they're there. Surely, together, we can find another place for these individuals to obtain that help, and that help being understanding how the court system works so they can proceed with trial. This education certainly can be done outside of these hospitals, freeing up critical beds for people who, in fact, do need hospitalization. The people I'm talking about coming out of the hospital are people who don't need inpatient psychiatric care, but there are other people in Ohio who clearly do. To accomplish this, the General Assembly will need to pass changes to the revised code to create a community-based misdemeanor competency restoration process. I'm calling on the legislature today to do that. Action number 3, early intervention. schools. We have a serious mental health crisis among many of our children in the state of Ohio today. It is growing worse. So many of our children have been negatively impacted by trauma. The trauma can take many forms. It can be living with an addicted parent. It can be seeing violence on the streets, seeing violence in the home. It can be all the problems that come from horrible poverty. The result is that the suicide rate among our young people today breaks your heart. It just breaks your heart. All the facts of the Dayton tragedy are not yet known, and they will be coming out in the days and weeks ahead. But it is clear that the assailant, while in high school, clearly exhibited antisocial behaviors that should have alerted anyone who knew about them that there was a problem, a serious problem with this high school student. I'm told by the specialists that half of mental health conditions problems start by the age of 14, half, and 75% are identified by age 24. Providing early intervention helps young people recover more quickly and have better outcomes with their education. It helps them build positive relationships with family and friends, and it helps them have healthier lives throughout adulthood. As part of the budget that has been approved by the General Assembly, and I know Senate President Larry Obhoff was here, I was told a moment ago. Thank you, Senator, for joining us. Appreciate it very much. I talked to the Speaker yesterday as well and the two minority leaders about what I was going to present. And I want to thank the General Assembly. Under this budget, we are investing $675 million for what we are calling wraparound services. These clearly can be used, and it's our intent for much of them to be used for mental health services for children. These are for addressing social and emotional challenges that our kids are facing, from suicide prevention to the effects of substance use crisis. And all of these things, teachers tell me, impact their ability to teach the child in the classroom. By providing funds to every school district, these schools can design tailored programs, working with their local mental health providers or other social service agencies to help these kids earlier in life. The earlier that we can intervene in children's lives and make a positive difference, clearly the better it is. Action item number 4. We are also increasing access under this budget, and again I thank the General Assembly, to behavioral health professionals in our schools with $15 million in Medicaid funding to provide telehealth mental health services to students so that no matter where a child lives in the state of Ohio, no matter how remote it is, they have access to high-quality mental health care. This, coupled with the wraparound services, will make a huge, huge difference. Let me move to action item number 5. Communities know their kids the best. The Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services will be working in a more concentrated effort. We'll be working with communities to increase knowledge of risk factors to help parents identify when their child is showing signs of a mental illness. The Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services will also share screening tools with clinicians, help connect community-based services, and link parents, families, and schools with proven supports and strategies to manage wellness over the child's lifetime. Item number 6, background checks. I'm asking the General Assembly to pass a law that requires background checks for all firearm sales in the state of Ohio, with the exception for gifts between family members and certain other limited uses. Number 7, an unbelievably high number of Ohio citizens are being killed as a result of chronic gun violence in the streets and in neighborhoods of our cities. Mayor, thank you for being here. Columbus Mayor Ginther, who talked about last night. Why we mourn those who were killed in Dayton. We should not forget the other Ohio citizens, our brothers and sisters. That includes many times children who are innocent victims of random violence and not so random violence. We cannot forget those individuals who are dying every day in our cities and across our state. We have to deal with those individuals who are inflicting that violence. Law enforcement officers have told me for years that the majority of violence in a community is being perpetuated by a relatively small number of individuals. We did a study a few years ago which absolutely confirmed that, going back to 1977. The vast majority of criminals in this state do not commit violent crime. We must target those who commit the violent crime. We must go after them. We must take them out of our communities. Far too often, criminals who have absolutely no right under Ohio law to possess a gun are using guns nonetheless. That's who we have to go after, the criminals. This must stop, so I'm asking the General Assembly to increase penalties on violent felons who continue to illegally possess or use guns. Number 8, illegal possession of a firearm by a violent felon. We must increase penalties for violent felons and other people who are found with a gun that they do not have the legal right to possess. The crime of having weapons while under a disability, which is what it's called, is currently a third-degree felony punishable by a maximum of 3 years in prison. I believe that this is a crime that for a first offense should be a second-degree felony punishable by 2 to 8 years in prison, and for a subsequent offense should be a first-degree felony, which is 3 to 11 years, excuse me. Item number 9, possession of firearm while committing a felony. We should increase penalties for people who commit felonies with a firearm or who possess a firearm while committing a felony. Current law allows for an additional penalty of 1 year when a person possesses a firearm while committing a felony. This should be increased to a mandatory additional 1 to 3 years. Item 10, using or brandishing a firearm while committing a felony. We must increase penalties for using or brandishing a weapon when committing a felony. Current law allows for an additional penalty of 3 years if a person uses or brandishes a firearm while committing a felony. This should be increased at a minimum to a mandatory 3 to 5 years in prison. Again, these are my recommendations to the General Assembly. The General Assembly will, I hope, act upon all of them and exercise their judgment on these. Item number 11, the problem of straw purchasers. We must increase penalties for those who buy guns illegally for other people, a practice known as straw purchasing. Now, straw purchasing is illegal under both Ohio and federal law today. However, the Ohio law must be toughened, and I intend to do that. All too often, firearms obtained through these straw purchases are used in serious violent offenses. I am asking the General Assembly to increase the penalties for those who purchase a gun illegally for another person. Today, the illegal purchaser of a firearm, the straw purchaser, this is the person who actually purchased it for the other person, through a straw purchase, that penalty is a third-degree felony punishable by up to 3 years in prison. We must increase the penalty for a straw purchaser to at least a second-degree felony punishable by 2 to 8 years in prison. Number 12, I'm also asking the General Assembly to increase the penalty for a person who possesses a firearm. This is the person through the straw purchase who got the firearm. And when they get that firearm that they know was obtained through an illegal or fraudulent purchase. When a person possesses a firearm they know was fraudulently obtained, that person should be punished in the same manner as the person who bought the firearm, an F2, 2 to 8 years. Number 13, we should increase penalties for people who illegally furnish firearms to minors. The Ohio law provides very well for father to give that gun to the son. This is done all the time. We have hunters, but that's not what we're talking about. We'd find too many of our kids are carrying guns on the streets, often with tragic consequences. So adults who illegally furnish firearms to minors must be held accountable. Today, improperly furnishing a firearm to a minor is only a 5th-degree felony, up to 12 months in prison. I'm asking the General Assembly to make the crime at least a 3rd-degree felony, punishable by up to 3 years in prison. Action item 14, school tip line. We are expanding our school safety tip line, where kids and adults can call or text anonymously with tips about potential school violence. I'm calling on Ohioans today to utilize that tip line. The number is 844-723-3764. 844-723-3764. We will have that on our website. Tom, it'll be on the public safety website, I believe, as well, and again, we're asking for people to step up. You see something, when you hear something, do something. And we want to make sure people understand that they have the ability to make that call. They can certainly always call their local police, they can call their local sheriff, call somebody. So we're expanding that school safety tip line. Let me talk about the world of social media. While each one of the mass shooting tragedies in this country is the same, but it's also different. And the lessons that we learn from one should be applied, and it should be cumulative to the lessons we learn from all. But one of the things that we have seen is that time after time, the assailant, when you go back, you see on social media, the signs were there. They were there. We should have caught them. In the 24/7 world of social media, threats can and do arise at any time. Our hub, is what it's called, at the Ohio Department of Public Safety, is expanding. I told them to expand their ability to monitor and track potential threats on social media and to share that information with local law enforcement and with schools. We now have the ability through software to target specific phrases, specific words. This is not that we're monitoring everybody's social media, but we're looking for that sign from that violent offender that might save a life or 10 lives. We will be in touch when we find things with the local schools and local law enforcement partners. Item 16, the budget that was approved by this General Assembly also includes nearly $9 million to help harden soft targets like nonprofits and religious organizations to make their facilities more secure. We are seeing too much hate, and we're seeing hate targeted at religious groups, and that is wrong. This action the General Assembly took is to help them prepare, help them avoid tragedy. Item 17, working closely with Sandy Hook Promise, Ohio schools are now implementing Know the Signs Safety Assessment Intervention Program across the state. The Know the Signs Safety Assessment Intervention Program. This program equips school staff with knowledge and skills to identify potential threats of violent action and to take steps to intervene. Currently, there are 23 training dates already scheduled. Again, I would appeal to our schools who have not had that training. Go out, take advantage of that. Take advantage of that training. I know also that the Attorney General has additional training in other areas that could be helpful for schools. Our state is heartbroken. The fabric of our society has been torn. We are shrouded in deep sadness at the needless loss of lives that occurred in Dayton. As Fran and I were there on Sunday, I thought about the parents who had lost children, children who had lost parents, friends who had lost friends. Now more than ever, we need to come together. We must come together as the much larger Ohio family. Because when one family grieves, all of us grieve. We have an obligation to each other. We have an obligation to include, not exclude people. We have an obligation to help others. We have an obligation to look out for each other. If someone is showing signs of struggle, problem, we must help, and we must not turn away. There is a saying that, and I quote, tragedy should be utilized as a source of strength. And, quote, no matter what sort of difficulties or how painful the experience is, if we lose hope, that's a real disaster. End of quote. So now's our time to be strong. Now's our time as a state to come together. Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives, everybody come together. And I'm calling on everyone to do that. Look, we might have some differences. We should never forget that what holds us together as Americans, as Ohioans, is so much greater than any differences. Look, we can do this. We can do the things that I outlined today. We will do them. We can do meaningful things to protect lives. It won't be easy, and although it is dark now, the sun will shine again. As we find the grace and the glory in each new sunrise and the hope of each new day. I believe in this state. I believe in its people. We can come together. We can come together to do these things to save lives. Let me just add, there's no magic about these proposals. there's no guarantees in life. If we do these, are there going to be violence someplace in the country? Well, we know there's going to be some violence. It's the world we live in. We understand. But I can tell you this. If we do these things, it will matter. If we do these things, it will make us safer. Each one of these by themselves is not going to solve all the problems. But I believe in my heart that each and every one of them will help. Each and every one of them will lessen the chance of violence. Each and every one of them will make this a better state and make this a stronger state. The work that we have ahead of us, though, is not just in these proposals. And if you look at these proposals, quite frankly, particularly in the area of mental health, where we have a crisis, it's going to be the day-to-day slog, the day-to-day work that is going to make the difference. It's the blocking and the tackling. I'm not the football player, John is, but it's you got to do it every single day. But I can tell you, if we're committed to do this, we can do it. If we're committed to making sure young kids have more access to mental health, if we're committed to reducing the trauma that they experience, we can make a big, big difference. Let me say something to my home, the Miami Valley, and to the specifically to the people in Dayton. We will spend the next few days burying the dead. We will spend the next few days hoping and helping that those who have been injured, helping them recover, praying for them. But the people of Dayton and the people of Miami Valley are resilient. If anybody has a doubt about that, they should have been there Sunday night, where as far as you could see, there were people. People holding up candles, people going to the scene of the crime and saying, we will not be intimidated. Dayton is a great city. It's a city, as we all know, with a great history. It's a city with a great future. So many great things going on. The mayor and I have talked about this a lot. She and I are both very optimistic about the future of Dayton. Its people are resilient, as we've already seen. So for the people of Dayton, there are better days ahead. For the people of Miami Valley, there are better days ahead. Sun will come up. There will be opportunities in the future. We will always remember those who died. We will always be scarred by that. But we will do what Ohioans have always done, and that is push forward. I'm more than happy to respond to any questions from the media.
You unveiling this package of proposals absent the shooting that occurred on Sunday?
Well, the things that I've just outlined, they were all in some process. But look, we're all human. Tragedy focuses you, and you know, it was time to get them out. The first item that I mentioned is an item that we've been working on for months. We were that close to getting it done, that close. Last 2 days, John drove it home and we got it done. So, you know, it's what I hope what you hope comes out of this is a renewed energy, a renewed sense that we need to tackle these problems. Some of them we're already tackling. This gives us a harder push, all of us, I think, all of us know how to do these things.
How are your safety protection order proposal different from what John Kasich proposed last year, and why do you think it's more likely to get done?
I can't tell you exactly what was in the governor's proposal, Governor Kasich's proposal. I will tell you that, and I'm going to let John answer this in a moment, but we were very careful to try to do something that would matter and that would work, but at the same time something that clearly protected due process and guaranteed those individuals due process. Let me just add one more thing before I turn to John. One of the things, in answer to the previous question, that I hope comes out of this is once this is passed by the General Assembly, people know about it and use it. Each one of us, I think, certainly anybody who's been as close as I have to law enforcement, can come up with examples of where we had someone who everybody in the town knew had a problem. I can think of one guy who had, and I won't say where it was, but he had long-term mental health problems everybody knew about. He was an alcoholic, and he had an arsenal of guns. And everybody sort of knew the day was coming, but nothing, for whatever different reasons, nothing got done. So what I hope comes out of this, not only that we pass the law, but that people understand that it can be activated. Now, due process is there. And John, you want to say anything?
Trying to address the specific question, what was different, is that we sat down with the Second Amendment community. They are here today. We invited them to be here and to be part of that process. Their major concern was, is there due process under the law? And in this provision, we provide due process under the law. If somebody is an immediate threat, the police can remove them. That exists in our current law. But then there will be a due process through the court system that will then give the ability for any weapons that the individual has to be taken by police. But it won't just happen at the police's discretion, it will happen at the order of a judge. That was the primary difference and the sticking point on these issues. And so we brought people to the table to have the discussion, to work it through. There will certainly be discussion about it as it goes through the process, but that's the primary difference between what was referred to as a red flag law and what we are referring to, which is different than that, is a safety protection order, which provides for that due process.
And look, let me just also emphasize, let me just also emphasize, when we say safety protection order, we kind of wrestle with what to call it. The idea is that you're going to eliminate some suicides by doing this. I mean, you're going to help. So it's the public, and it's also the individual. Sometimes these people are their own worst enemy, and it's just the way it is. So you're going to save some lives there. You can save some lives out in the community. Who else?
Lieutenant Governor, can you walk through the specific step-by-step process by which
Okay.
the safety protection
Let me just, okay, this is in our prepared statement, it's what I read. That is the exact process. It is a two-step process, but every stage there is protection. And I think it's literally, we can get you my statement. It is there. I mean, it is a process that is activated. It's a process that is activated initially by a family member or by the police. And I think that's what, so if you have somebody else out in the community who is seeing this, they can go to the police and report that. Then you start through the process. And there is basically what I would call a temporary order. That hearing is from 3 days, and then you flip right over into a more permanent order. But in both of those, due process has to take place. All the due process, right across examine, all of those things. So you gotta get service on the person. In other words, you have to notify them. They have to have the opportunity to come to court. So it's all the procedures that we are so used to in our criminal justice system and that you know so well.
So you're saying that the 3-day period after the judge signs the order, the temporary
No.
order, they will get
No.
to keep their guns for that time?
No. We hope that judges will put this on a rocket docket and will deal with it and get the people in and serve them, get them served, make sure they have their due process and get them in there. What we are saying, we hope it happens much sooner. What we're saying is the judge would have 3 days to do this, that first hearing. We would then say, after that order, and there's a different standard of proof there, then you would flip over into the permanent hearing, which would have to be within 14 days. Yeah, John wants to add
I
something.
want to add a practical issue so that you understand, because I spoke with law enforcement about this. I spoke with people from the Second Amendment community. We tried to thread the needle on everybody's concerns. But if somebody is an immediate threat, taking their guns does not remove that threat. You need to remove the person from the situation and then go through the due process to take the weapons away if the judge so orders. Because there are many other ways to commit violence other than with guns. And so if a person is an immediate threat, we need to remove them and either pink slip them and put them in a mental health facility or put them in jail so that this process can take place. It's not seizing somebody's property without due process. That was the stick, that was the issue that couldn't get resolved in the past. We've worked with voices across the broad array of concern, and we believe we have those sorted out.
And this is heavy. John makes a very good point. What we presented to the General Assembly is heavy on helping that person. Now, it's not punitive. We want to protect them from themselves. We want to protect them from hurting somebody else. But if you look at that proposal, it calls for help going directly to that individual. And that's what, it's very heavy on that.
And we believe, unlike in the past when it failed, that we brought people together and this can pass and become law and begin to be implemented sooner rather than having the old fights that ended up in inaction.
Governor, the Dayton killer had a 100-shot, double-barrel, extended magazine, 41 shots, apparently fired in 26 seconds. Was any consideration given to limiting the capacity of magazines?
Look, there are a lot of issues that we could talk about. There are a lot of issues that, quite candidly, if you're serious about getting results, I'm kind of a results-oriented guy, some of these things have to be done at the federal level. John, you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that's sufficient.
Governor, the people of Toledo, all throughout the state, want to know, why does it take a tragedy to get pen to paper, to get this in front of the legislator, to get people to actually vote?
As I indicated, there are, a lot of this was in the works. In fact, all of it, I think. There may not be some exceptions, but I'm not aware of anything that was not already in the works. Part of this is, I have made this very clear throughout this crisis, that we're going to do things that matter, we're going to do things that are constitutional, and we're going to do things that can get passed. So making sure something can get passed is a key. You'll find, after 4 years or 8 years with me, I'm bottom line, results-oriented. I don't do a whole lot of things just to be doing them. So our job is to get results. Our job is to get something passed. And so getting it in the proper form, for example, our item number 1, which you're just talking about, we needed to make sure that we had the buy-in, that we had the assistance from the Second Amendment community. Because if we presented that bill to this General Assembly without that, the bill would go nowhere. So what I owe the people of the state is results. I don't owe them rhetoric. Rhetoric's fine, sometimes there's occasion for it. But what they want, and what I've heard year after year from the people of Ohio, is fix the problems, help us make things better. That's what this proposal does. But as far as the timing of all of those, that's why we're trying to get these things in a way that we can get them passed by the General Assembly.
Governor, what conversations have you had with legislative leaders that would suggest they're more
I have talked with all 4 legislative leaders. I had those conversations yesterday. I have said to them, we will get you copies of it. I tried to outline in broad brush strokes what we were going to do. I also said to them, I fully understand that the General Assembly will do what the General Assembly does, which is hold hearings and look at these things. But you know, these are all things that I believe can pass. These are all things that we can get done. These are all things that will make a difference. These are all things that are constitutional.
And it was great that Larry Obhoff, it was a great sign, and Senator Obhoff, I know he had to go, but he was here, and that's a big sign.
And I talked to all 4 of the leaders. So.
Can you talk more about what social media monitoring by the state is like now compared to what you were calling for?
We started this, Tom, can you come up, Tom Stickler, because I want to get the chronology correct. This is not brand new, but it's going up like that. So you want to talk about, when I was Attorney General, we started talking about it.
Yeah, we did. Thank you. Tom Stickrat, Director of Public Safety, and we did start talking about this with Attorney General DeWine and working on some of these things at the Bureau of Criminal Investigation. I would say the difference is we're now being proactive rather than reactive. We've probably historically been reactive with social media. After an event, we go back and take a look at what we can find out. What we're trying to do now is be more on the front end, the prevention side of it. Again, not the NSA looking at every social media, but looking at those keywords and phrases, using software, technologies, and trained staff to be on the front end of these situations.
So to be clear, if I'm sending a Facebook message and it has one of these key words, will it come up? Will there be a signal by the state that is picked up?
There could be.
Yes.
And look, this is, anybody can do this. So, you know, we worry about, correctly, worrying about the government, state doing it. But when someone puts that out, and what we're seeing time after time after time is there were warnings. With this, you know, you see almost in every case you're seeing warnings on the internet, something they're putting up, posting. When you drill down it, you see them go back to this young man. It's usually a young man. You see what he was saying in high school. You see social alienation. You see writing things. I mean, there was one case a few years ago, tragic case, where, you know, a person in high school, I believe it was high school, had written "someone must die" on the top of their page. Well, you know, teacher said, well, that's not good. But look, these are signs, and this is, we need to look at this as a package. We need to look at all the different things, because part of this, as I pointed out, we had already started down this pathway. The $675 million, when we asked this legislature to give us wraparound services, it was in direct result of what we have been seeing time and time again, that we're having children traumatized and they're having mental health problems, and we've got to deal with those mental health problems. So a lot of this was moving forward, but you have to look at it, I think, holistically in how we help kids every single day. In some cases, we're going to be able to identify a kid who's suicidal. In other cases, we may identify a young person who is exhibiting all kinds of bad signs that in, you know, a few years or not a few years, they'll turn into a killer. So it all comes together.
How important is it for the General Assembly to take all of these proposals to heart and not just cherry pick the ones that might be more palatable?
Look, each one is important. Each one should be passed. I see no reason that all these cannot be passed. I expect the General Assembly to do its constitutional duty, to look at these issues, to hold hearings, to bring in interested parties. But we have tried to put together these proposals that are constitutional, that make a difference, and that we think we can get passed. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I'm not going to say it's going to be easy. But to get back to a question that was asked a moment ago in reference to folks in Toledo, the momentum that has been created by this horrible, horrible tragedy, you know, I think is putting a spotlight on this. You're reporting it more talk about it, everybody's looking at it more. Now is a window of opportunity for us to change things, to do what we need to do.